Hello everyone, welcome to the Hindu vocabulary. Why I call it the Hindu vocabulary is because these words that I intend to teach you in this video are taken from the very famous newspaper, The Hindu. Now The Hindu is a newspaper based out of the southern part of India, that is the peninsular India. It is known for its exceptionally courageous journalism, and one area where The Hindu is very different to the rest of the newspapers is the kind of English that is used. It's a very saturated English, and therefore it provides opportunity, I would say, to English aficionados, the people who want to learn English, the people who want to become confident in their day-to-day conversation. They can read this newspaper and get benefited. So the endeavor is to bring to you some of the best words from this newspaper which I come across while going through the newspaper, so that I can bring those to you and help you in your quest to become a confident person. So here we go. First word is drastic. Now let's say you go to a gym, you do a workout for let's say 4 months, and your weight was 100 kgs and now your weight is 80 kgs. So there has been a drastic reduction in your weight and your looks too. So if somebody notices you after 4 months, he would say, "Oh, you look so different. There has been a drastic change in your looks," which means lot of change, substantial, not mild, substantial, serious, radical change, extreme change. Look at this image that's there. This is the image that reflects areas where there is a lot of climate change. If we have to reverse the climate change, then drastic changes need to be undertaken, like closing down of factories, maybe like taking more measures to protect the water resources and so on. So drastic means something serious, something substantial. The next word is double whammy. What's a whammy? Whammy is like a natural force that something bad is about to happen, and therefore you double it now. So double whammy means when something bad is about to take place, two bad things happen at the same time. It is called a double whammy. So for example, I was already jobless. I did not have a job. I was looking for a job and suddenly demonetization happened. Because of that, there was a cash crunch in the market and the chances of my getting a job decreased significantly. So it was like a double whammy for me. Persecute. Persecute means when you try to punish someone, when you victimize someone, when you do not treat the other person very well, or you kind of have a intention to abuse the other person. That is called persecution. So for example, the country's leaders relentlessly persecuted those who fought against the regime. For example, let's take an example of let's say North Korea. Now North Korea is a type of country where there is one ruler. So any journalist, if he wishes to write against the establishment, against the rule or regime, what will happen to that journalist? He will be persecuted. He will be abused, mistreated, punished, or who knows, he might be done away with. So that is the meaning of persecution. Logistics. It's a word that you will see in your daily lives at a lot of places, newspapers, magazines, day-to-day conversations. What is logistics? Logistics means, first let's take a look at the definition. The aspect of science dealing with the procurement, maintenance and transportation of material, facilities and personnel. So for example, let's say you are a vendor. You are an ice cream vendor. So your job is to stand at the counter and deal with people who wish to buy the ice cream. But you will need some guy to maintain the logistics. That is to bring the ice cream from the factory to your kiosk and to load those in your kiosk, to take care of the operation, supply chain. That is logistics. So logistics can be for material, for personnel also. For example, we have a separate department that take care of the logistics for defense. We need to procure arms, weapons, grenades, lot of things for ensuring that there is no shortage of weapons or personnel in the defense. So a proper logistics is required. So he was present at the counter and I handled the logistics at the bar. Next word is sabre-rattling, and sabre-rattling is a very important word, especially these days. Now sabre-rattling means when you try to scare your enemy, when you try to show to your enemy that you are a big threat by displaying your capabilities, especially military capabilities. So for example, Pakistan always shows us the fear of its nuclear prowess. It says that we are a nuclear country, we are a nuclear country, and it keeps on repeating it almost every week to show to India that it is more powerful. It's an example of sabre-rattling, the display or threat of a military force. Similarly, North Korea. North Korea also conducts these large uh, displays of their army. It has a very big army and it is also a nuclear country. So to scare United States of America, Japan or its other enemies, it always displays its military. That is sabre-rattling. Eradicate. Eradicate means when you want to get rid of something completely. For example, polio has been eradicated from India owing to the widespread use of vaccines in India. So, a lot of polio campaigns, and the purpose of these campaigns is to educate the masses so that each and every child gets the polio drops. This has led to eradication of polio from India, which means complete removal of something. Three words are very important. Uproot, like just as you pull a plant outside from the soil, and that means uprooting it or destroying it completely. Exterminating, extirpating, these all mean the same and are highly important words. Cognate. Cognate means very similar. Something, two things that are very similar owing to their origin, or they are somehow connected in some ways. So for example, Spanish and French languages, they are cognate languages. They are also called the languages of romance, and their origin is very similar. So if you read Spanish and French while studying these both languages, and I have been very fortunate to study both of these languages, I found lot of similarities in a lot of words, in a lot of accents. So these are cognate languages. So when two things are similar because of their interconnected nature or their origin, then they are cognate. Now don't confuse it with cognitive. Cognitive refers to logic, your thinking. So that's a completely different word. Another high frequency word is treason. Treason means when you break the trust of someone. Usually this word is used when you betray your country. For example, the gentleman in the picture is Edward Snowden. Now Edward Snowden unmasked America's efforts to snoop other countries, and therefore he is considered a traitor. Who is a person who betrays you? He is called a cheat, a traitor. So Edward Snowden is considered a traitor. He was charged with, or he was accused of treason by United States of America. So treason means deceit or treachery. Both these words mean the same, treachery or deceit, which means betrayal of trust. Formidable. Formidable means when something inspires fear or respect because it is very powerful. For example, India's army is quite formidable. Nobody would like to take India's army lightly. That is the kind of respect it inspires. Similarly, look at the boundary between China and India, the Himalayas. They are a stretch of mountains encompassing almost 2400 kilometers. So the Himalayas are mountains that form a very respectable, formidable barrier between India and China. So the respect or fear that comes from something or someone being very large or powerful or capable means formidable. Another example, world number 1 player in tennis will not take world number 2 player lightly because he is also a formidable opponent. Bigotry. Bigotry means when you don't like people, when you can't tolerate people who think differently to you, when they hold different opinions from the ones that you hold. That is called bigotry. When you are very biased, when you are completely intolerant, you are obdurate, you can't tolerate any other person, you are stubborn on your views, when you can't accommodate other person's views, and therefore you always behave in a way that is very partisan or partial or biased. That is called bigotry. So for example, my teacher is a self-proclaimed bigot who believes all teenagers are bad. So my teacher has this preconceived notion that all the teenagers, they are bad. So now I can't do anything about it because that is a sort of a bigotry. He is a self-proclaimed bigot. Similarly, Donald Trump recently said that the world has a threat of Islamic terrorism. And a lot of people said that it is bigotry. Donald Trump even went a step further and banned the people from 7 countries from entering United States of America. And that may, by some sections of the media, be classified as bigotry. So keep track of this word, it's very important. Next is called jump on the bandwagon or jumping on the bandwagon. Let's say 4 of your friends have made account on Instagram. So suddenly you will also feel that you should also be on Instagram and you will create an account. So that is called jumping on the bandwagon. Everybody is doing it, so I will also do it. So an activity or cause that suddenly becomes fashionable or popular. Now, a lot of these countries are making smart cities in India, so Germany also jumped on the bandwagon. And now Germany is actually making smart cities in India. Similarly, a lot of startups in India, they are raising money from venture capitalists because they see it as a shortcut to growth or increasing their valuation. They are just jumping on the bandwagon. Next is incarnate. Incarnate means when a person represents certain qualities so much that instead of saying that quality, you say that person. For example, if my mother tells me that I expect you to become someone like Kalam, in other words, she's telling me that I want you to become honest, hardworking, patriot, and so on. And because APJ Abdul Kalam represents those qualities, he is like a living and now deceased embodiment of those qualities. So, to represent an idea or a quality in a very clear and obvious way. So Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, he incarnates the nation's political ideals. So if somebody wishes to have political ideals, then he should be like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Similarly, a lot of people say God incarnate, which means if somebody does so much for the society, then he can be said to be God incarnate because God is an idea or a quality, and we see that quality in that person. Presage. Presage means, see, the word pre means before. So to give a sign of something that will happen in future is called a presage. Like harbinger or portent, omen, prophecy, they all mean the same thing. So many investors are worried that the current slowdown could presage another recession, which means the markets are showing the sign of recession. And if it increases, it might be a serious economic collapse. So presage means when you get a sign or omen or prophecy, means a sign of something that will happen in future. Deplete. Deplete means when something reduces in its quantity or quality. That is called deplete. So due to large scale deforestation, our natural resources are fast depleting. And the opposite of this word is replete, which means surplus or something that is completely full. So if there is a glass and I keep on adding water, it will get filled up to the brim. So it is replete. So replete and deplete, they are antonyms. Deplete means when something reduces. So activities such as logging and mining, they deplete our natural resources. Stigma. Stigma, now where this word originated from. Stigma is a part of a flower. So you can see in the photo, there is a part of a flower which is, can you show this attachment? So we say stigma attached. What is that stigma? It is a set of negative and unfair beliefs that a society has about something. So for example, if a girl wear spectacles, then some say that, oh, she is not fit for marriage. What is this? This is a stigma. If somebody consumes alcohol, then he is often seen to be negative. Doesn't matter the million things which positive that he can contribute to the society. A lot of people will still think that that person is negative because they have negative belief. They have an unfair belief towards that person, to that thought, or to anything. That is called stigma. So the stigma of being unemployed, the stigma of being an alcoholic, The stigma of being short in height, the stigma of being a widow. There are a lot of stigmas that exist in the society. Ambush. Ambush means when you hide yourself, and it is an act of hiding and waiting for your enemy to appear and then suddenly attacking. It's like a surprise attack. So for example, the soldiers were lying in ambush waiting for the enemy to approach. So it is a part of secret operation, which is called covert operation, or clandestinely when you do something slyly, secretly. Next important word is convulse. Look at the sentence. The patient reacted to the medication and began convulsing. Have you seen a patient of a disease called epilepsy? The patient suddenly falls down during an attack and the body shakes violently and the patient is not able to control. So this is called convulsion. Look at the sentence. The country was convulsed by war, which means there was, just like the body shakes, the country was shaking. The country was taken by surprise because there was a political upheaval, there was anarchy, there was violence. In other words, the country was convulsed. It was completely taken aback. It was completely surprised. It shook the very core of the country. Therapeutic. Therapeutic means something that produces very good effect on your body or your mind. Something that heals you. Something that heals your body, your mind. For example, well, you have been burdened by a lot of work in your company. So you want to take a break. You want to go for vacations. You want to go to your, your parental home, your ancestral home, and you want to take a break because that is therapeutic for the mind. It will produce good effect on your body. And gardening can be very therapeutic. But please note that something by itself is not therapeutic. So what might be therapeutic for one person might not be for another. For example, for some, traveling is very good for health, but for some it is very tiring. And there are two very important synonyms for therapeutic. One is salubrious. Salubrious is something that increases your health, enhances your health. And same is curative, something that cures you. Paranoia. Paranoia, it is a mental illness that causes you to believe that every person in the world is trying to harm you. So you become unnecessarily suspicious of everyone. So for example, she was diagnosed with delusional paranoia. So a paranoid person will always be very, very suspicious of an activity or a person. Craven. Craven means when you lack courage, when you are a coward. Coward is a person who runs away from responsibilities, who runs away whenever there is a difficult situation. So craven means having or showing a complete lack of courage, when you lack valor, when you are not gallant, when you are not courageous. So he proved he was not craven when he ran into a burning building to save a stranger. So he proved he did not lack courage because he jumped into a burning building to save somebody, which means that he was not a coward. His actions were not dastardly or cowardly. He did not act in a cowardly manner. Apostle. Apostles were the 12 people who were chosen by Jesus Christ to spread the message of peace, to spread the message of Christianity across the globe. But now we use it in what sense? When a person is one of the pioneers in something, then that person is called apostle. So a person who is a supporter of a particular policy, an idea, or a cause is an apostle. So you can say Elon Musk is one of the apostles of space tourism, for example. He's one of the pioneers in that field. Similarly, Kejriwal is a man once known as the apostle of honest politics. So apostle means an example of an idea or a policy or a cause. Litigant. Litigant is a person who is involved in a court case. As simple as that. That person might be the one who has actually filed a court case on someone, or he might be the one who is the accused. Both are called litigants. So a plaintiff is a litigant and the defendant is also a litigant. Plaintiff is a person who files a case, who drags somebody to court, whereas a defendant is a person who is defending himself or who has hired an advocate to defend himself. Basically, he is the one who is trying to escape the court case. So both plaintiff and defendant, they are litigants because both of them are involved in a lawsuit. Stride. Stride means to walk with very long steps. So she took large strides across the room towards me. In other words, she reached the point where I was standing in a very short time because she took very long steps. She took large strides. But how this word is used in our day-to-day lives? The company has taken large strides in their quest to go global, which means, let's say I have a company. Now it is doing well throughout India. So I want to go global now, which means I want to open its offices in foreign countries, and for that I recently got the approval from the government. Therefore, my company took large strides or long steps in their objectives. Enclosure. Enclosure is any area which is surrounded by walls or an enclosed space, that is called enclosure. For example, your room, well, it is an enclosure. Any area that is surrounded by a wall or a fence. So during the day, the horses are kept in an enclosure. Intellectual. Well, this word you will see almost every day. You will hear this word when you see any news. And intellectual is a person who has a very high intelligence, who is very, very learned, who has a very well developed intellect. He can be said to be cognitive, which means he has good logic. Cerebral again means very, very intelligent. His ability to foresee things, his insights, they are very, very, powerful. So that person is called intellectual. Now you will also hear the word pseudo intellectual. Pseudo intellectual means a person who is not very intelligent, but he actually tries to show himself as intelligent. That person is called pseudo intellectual. And there is a sentence that I have written: wearing glasses or spectacles might make you look more intellectual. So if you see a person who is wearing glasses, you will suddenly get a feeling that, oh, he's very studious, very hardworking, very intellectual, very intelligent, very cognitive, but it might not be the case. Xenophobia. This word was said to be the word of the year by dictionary.com. Xenophobia means when you have a fear of foreigners. When you feel that every foreigner is trying to harm your country, you have an extreme dislike or fear of foreigners, their customs, their religions. And it is seen in India also in some parts. Like people feel that if Westerners come here, then their culture, their tradition, their customs and traditions, their values will be attacked. So that is an example of xenophobia. Next word is abstemious. When you don't indulge too much in anything, like food, like drinks, then you are abstemious. So she is known as an abstemious eater and drinker, or she is known to be an abstemious eater and drinker. So if you don't drink, if you don't drink too much, or if you don't eat too much, if you don't smoke too much, let's say if you don't go after too much the pleasures of life, then you are an abstemious person. So abstemious means having good self-control so that you don't indulge too much in anything. Of course, you can try these things, you can try some things, but you don't indulge too much in those things. Discursive. Discursive means when you go out of context. For example, let's say we are talking about liberalization or demonetization, and suddenly you start talking about World War I. You start talking about Gandhi. You bring into the conversation some ideas that are not relevant, that are not germane to the discussion. So when you digress from your subject, when you ramble, or when you are incoherent, which means when you are not to the point, when you wander or you are out of context, that is called discursive. So for example, my teacher told me that I had written a discursive essay and therefore she was forced to give me a 0. Bastion. Bastion was a part of a fort or a very big building that was made to protect the establishment, protect the system, or protect the fort itself. But now how the word bastion is used. For example, Gujarat is a Narendra Modi bastion, is a BJP bastion, which means BJP, the chances of losing elections for BJP in Gujarat are very less. It is a bastion, it is like a fort. So look at the sentence that I have written. India is a bastion of democracy, which means if you want to see any country where democracy is very vibrant, very robust, come to India. So an organization, community, place, a system that supports or protects a particular idea or belief or tradition is a bastion. So just like India is a bastion of democracy, you can say China is a bastion of communism. Similarly, you can say USA is also a bastion of democracy. And traditionally, an all male bastion, golf was gradually opened to women competitors also. So golf, some say that the full form of golf was gents only, ladies forbidden, which means ladies were not very active in golf. But if you see now, then the women and the men, they are at par in golf. Next is guffaw. Guffaw is when you laugh and you are not able to control yourself. And you laugh in a very rough and noisy way. You make a lot of noise while laughing. It is an unrestrained burst of laughter. So her remark sparked guffaws around the room. Uncontrolled laughter. To some it may seem indisciplined laughter, whereas to some it may seem just fun. Canopy. Canopy, there are two meanings. One, uppermost branches of a tree in a forest that form a continuous layer of foliage. So much so that even the sunshine is not able to penetrate and reach the surface of the earth. That is how dense a canopy can be, especially in evergreen forests or tropical rainforests. Whereas canopy can also mean something that has a roof. For example, look at this kiosk that is there. And you must have seen such kiosks outside buildings, outside educational institutions where people advertise themselves. So it's a canopy. Canopy means any enclosure that has a roof. That can also be termed as a canopy. But the literal meaning of canopy is when trees make a canopy, which means the uppermost branches of a tree that form a continuous layer. So African monkeys, they spend hours and hours every day sitting high in the canopy. Pummel. Pummel means to punch someone very hard, to repeatedly hit somebody again and again. When you hit someone very hard, that is called pummel. So for example, her last movie was pummeled by the critics, which means that the critics, they severely castigated or insulted the movie. They said that the movie was not good, their feedback was negative, so they gave very less ratings. So in a way, she was punched by the critics. She was attacked by the critics. That is called pummeling. Next is petrol. It is not the petrol that we use as a fuel in our vehicle. That is petrol. It is petrol. Petrol means, for example, what is the role of the watchman that is outside your house? Or sometimes you might keep a dog. What is the purpose of a dog? It is to keep an eye on who is going and who is coming. In other words, he is patrolling. So when you keep a watch over an area by regularly walking or traveling around it, that is called patrolling. In this diagram, this particular soldier, he is patrolling the area, and in other words, you can say he is trying to protect the kids also by making sure that the people from outside, they don't come near to the children, etc. Next is irate. It's an easy word. It means very, very angry, very annoyed, furious, vexed. Vex means to annoy someone. Vex means to irritate someone. So when you are very irritated, irascible, annoyed, indignant, then it is irate. So irate viewers called the television network to complain about the show. Next word is modus vivendi. It's a compromise between two countries, two person or two parties, just to make sure that there is peace. There is temporary peace. For example, look at what is happening in Syria. There has been a war which is going on. It's like a proxy war between America and Russia. So now, seeing no end to the solution, the two countries have called for a truce, which means they have settled for a compromise and there has been end to the Syrian war. It is a modus vivendi on the issue of Syria. It's a practical compromise so that there can be peaceful coexistence of both the parties. There can be peace. Next is riparian. Riparian means something that is located on the bank of a natural water course, such as a river or a lake. So any city, for example, that is located on the bank of a river is riparian. Riparian means living or located on the bank of a river or a lake. There is a word called upper riparian and there is a word called lower riparian. A river always flows downstream as the gradient allows it to flow. So there are places which might be at the higher altitude, and there might be places which are at the lower altitude. For example, let's take an example of the river Brahmaputra. It flows from China to India downstream, which means China is at the higher altitude and India is lower. So therefore, China is the upper riparian state and India is the lower riparian state with respect to Brahmaputra. Purple patch. Purple patch means when you are having a good time in your life, when you are getting lot of success, lot of luck, that is called a purple patch. So people expect Virat Kohli to score in every game now because he has hit a purple patch. Or you can say his purple patch is going on. So purple patch means a very good time in your life. It is really a very good time in Virat Kohli's life because he's been scoring runs, he's been scoring centuries, he's breaking all the records, and he has been made the captain of T20, One Day and Test matches, all the three formats of the game. Next word is Jinx. The word Jinx means something or someone that brings bad luck. Well, let's say you are going somewhere and suddenly there is a cat that crosses your way. So someone might as well say you are jinxed. In other words, something bad might happen to you now because a cat has crossed your way. So with this victory, the team seems to have shaken off the jinx that's been dogging them for months. So let's say Indian cricket team was losing. It was on a losing streak and now suddenly it has won. So with this victory, the team seems to have shaken off the jinx, which means it seems to have broken the bad luck, the tenure of the bad luck that's been dogging them for months. Next word is one of my favorite words. It is IL. So there is another very similar word called ISLE, IL. The word that starts with an I, that is ISLE, IL, means an island like Lakshadweep Islands, Andaman and Nicobar Islands and so on. Whereas the word IL, ASLE, AISLE, it means it is a distance or a passage between rows of seats in a building such as a church or theater, an aircraft or train. For example, just imagine that you have entered into an aircraft, an aeroplane, and there are two rows, one to your left, one to the right. The gap between the two rows is the aisle where you will actually walk. So there will be a seat that will be adjacent to that aisle. So an air hostess will come and she will ask you, which seat do you prefer? Towards the window or towards the aisle? Which means, do you prefer the third seat or do you prefer the seat that is immediately adjacent to the aisle? So that is the meaning of an aisle. Now there is a saying to walk down an aisle. So for example, in a church, in Christian marriages, they take place in church, and in a church, there is a left sitting and there is a right sitting. The guests are seated towards the left and right, and the bride and the bridegroom, they walk down the aisle, the space that is there between the two sittings. So to walk down the aisle means to get married. Bifurcate. Bifurcate means when something divides into two branches or two parts. The river, take a look at this river. It is bifurcating at this point, which means it is splitting into two. That is the meaning of bifurcation. Next word is ticklish. It has been in news because ticklish is something that is very sensitive, that appeals to people's emotions, and therefore even a slight provocation can really offend a lot of people. For example, ban on Jallikattu is a ticklish matter. It is a ticklish issue because it is really emotive or emotional for a lot of people. Similarly, we saw that the issue of Rani Padmavati is also a very emotional issue. So ticklish means easily offended or upset, touchy, requiring very skillful or tactful handling or delicate. Now ticklish might be an object also. If you recall, there is a very important word for ticklish, which is fastidious. Fastidious means something that requires great attention, otherwise it will break, like a very delicate glass. So this glass that you see in the image is ticklish because it is very vulnerable to breakage. Similarly, ticklish can be an object or ticklish can be a matter or issue. And the last word for today is an important one and one of my favorites. It is armor. Armor means any protective covering. Now, anything that protects you is an armor. It can be a social defense, it can be emotional defense, it can be a physical object. So for example, look at this picture. the warrior in this picture is wearing an armor which will protect him from the weapons of the enemies. So for example, knowledge is also an armor because it protects you from the social evils. The more educated you are, the less likely that you will fall in the trap of any social evil. So armor is basically any protective covering. Now there are two important axioms or sayings when it comes to armor. First is chink in one's armor, which means a weak area or an area of vulnerability, like an Achilles heel. You might recall the story of Achilles, who was a god, but he had a very vulnerable heel, and that's the part where the enemy hit him. So Achilles heel is your weak area. So chink in one's armor means any weak area of a strong person. And there is another saying called knight in shining armor. So knight in shining armor is a very courageous, very chivalrous man, very brave, who comes to the rescue of a woman in a difficult situation. Just like a Spider-Man, as soon as a woman falls in any trouble, Spider-Man is there to her rescue. So knight in shining armor means an idealized or chivalrous man. Chivalrous means very brave, very courageous, gallant, valor, someone who has valor, who comes to the rescue of a woman in a difficult situation. So every girl waits for her knight in shining armor. Now, if you have watched this video with a lot of attention and detail, then can you tell me the meaning of two words? The first word is Jinx, Jinx, and the second word is Riparian, Riparian. Please write down in comments and please share the video as much as you can. The Hindi videos have millions of views and I want the same to be for my English videos also. Thank you.